Now, I hadn't actually heard of this brand until they reached out to me on Instagram and asked if they could send me one of their journals, but today we are reviewing this notebook from Yourbujo. When I told people, oh, I'm going to be doing a review of Yourbujo, there was a bit of panic that I was going to be ripping into people's spreads and setups on the internet, but no, this is the brand name. Yourbujo. If while we're going through this one, you think that this journal might be right for you and you wanted to grab yourself one, do be sure to check out the link that I've left in the description box below, but let's get into it. As a disclaimer, I of course have my own preferences when it comes to notebooks, in terms of the paper color, in terms of the features that my notebooks have. But as we go through, I will do my best to give you an unbiased review, but I'll tell you when something is or isn't to my personal preference. Having a look at the claims on the Yourbujo website, so our dotted journal has 176 pages, the paper is 150 GSM with a soft surface, and it says that it behaves like 180 GSM due to its 1.2 times volume. Not too sure what that means, but we will test it. The paper is ultra white recycling paper made from 100% secondary fibers. The size is A5, so 148mm by 210mm. We have one bookmark, plastic-free packaging, which I can confirm happened, lies super flat on every page, no ghosting, no bleeding, great for watercolors, acrylics, etc., and we have a smooth and soft surface. And as we can see, some of those claims are repeated on the front cover here, so 176 pages, 100% recycled paper, 150 GSM dotted paper that was made in Germany. We've got a little card here that tells us this Bujo is made from 100% recycled paper. And on the back we have an invitation to join their community. We've got their Instagram handle, and they say, we would love to hear your feedback concerning our bullet journals. You can see here that they have the Blue Angel seal, or the German eco label. So I say you can pretty much trust that this is recycled paper. But setting this to the side and slipping this sleeve off. Starting with our structural features, in terms of cover design, I went for the olive green option, and we have a linen cover for this one. Each of the journals comes with the 3 dots down the side here, that's the logo for the company. And there are other cover options, both in terms of color and in terms of personalization. So you can get some personalization on the front cover here in 3 different font styles, and that personalization is 12 characters max. In terms of the other journal covers, like we said, mine's the olive, but it does also come in a pink, which they call rose, and a beige color. At the time of filming this video, the price is approximately $36 US from their website. If you want to get that personalization on the front, as can be expected, it does cost a little bit more. So that'll add €4.50 or approximately $4.50 to $5 US onto the total price. As you can see, we do have an elastic closure, and this is a really solid elastic. It's not really all that stretchy, which is kind of nice. I think it means that it's going to keep your notebook closed. And in terms of the way it's secured at the back, you can see that it is securely stitched in here and here. We do have a pen loop on this notebook, and we've got a fairly decent distance between the edge of the notebook and the paper itself. So the paper is going to be very protected by the cover. As you can see, we do have that singular bookmark, and it is long enough to poke out the end. The only thing I'll say is that the color of the bookmark is a little bit interesting compared to the color of the cover. The hue of the notebook itself is a much more yellow-green, whereas the bookmark is more of a blue-green. But the bookmark is nicely long enough to actually be able to mark your pages. If we open up our notebook though, and turning into the first page here, you can see we do have a nameplate page. So we have the Yourbujo logo, or type logo, this Bujo belongs to, and then some lines. Now, obviously, given the name of the company and the fact that it says this Bujo belongs to, there is probably a general expectation that you use this for a bullet journal, but you could of course cover this up with a sticker or washi tape or something like that if you wanted to use it for something else. After this, flipping into our first page, so as we have in a lot of notebooks, we do have this page here stuck to this one, so you can either kind of pull it apart slightly and just press that down, which is what I typically like to do, or you could try and actually forcibly remove the pages from each other, which can sometimes lead to ripping, so I'm not going to do it, but just folding that one over is fine for me. Now, considering that this is 100% recycled paper, I am surprised at how white it is. In terms of the bullets on our page though, they are fairly light, so if you have issues with being able to see dots that are of a slightly lighter colour, this one might be a little tricky for you. Personally, for me, I can see them fine enough, so it wouldn't bother me, but that is something to consider when you're buying a notebook. In terms of the lying flat, it certainly does. We do have an interesting amount of space here though. I think it's just because the cover is fairly thick, so we've got a fair drop off here. I wonder if this happens in all journals and I just haven't noticed it before. We open up an Archer and Olive just to compare, so first cover of this one. No, this one kind of folds back quite a lot and it also drops down. The cover drops down when you open up the Archer and Olive, whereas this one here, the cover doesn't drop down as much, so you do have this kind of shelf, I suppose you could say. That may not be bother to you, but I wanted to mention it all the same. I think it just comes from the fact that we've got this kind of trench here, so when you open it, the front cover doesn't dip down to the spine, it kind of stays in the same place, which does make it a little bit tricky to access the final column of dots on this page, but just something to be aware of. Outside of that nameplate page, it doesn't seem like we have any specialty pages. We'll turn to the back just to check that we don't have any here. So, yep, no pre-named pages. We also don't have any numbering on the pages, so if page numbers are something you're looking for, you would have to put those in yourself. But if, like me, you don't really care for page numbers, then it's all good. In the back, we do have that gusseted pocket with the secured edges, so nice and stable. In terms of the sizing of that pocket, this one is just under 12 centimeters deep. Having a look at one of our spreads in the middle here, so training the page down with our finger, I am still very surprised at how white the paper is, considering the fact that it's 100% recycled. Obviously, because it is recycled paper, we do have some slight imperfections. So you can see one here, and one here, one there. But that's kind of to be expected, given the fact that the paper is recycled. Having a look at the sizing of our dot grid, so each of the spaces is 5mm, as you can see with our ruler. And in terms of the number of spaces across, we have 13.5 centimeters, or 27 spaces across. And running down the page, we have 19.5 centimeters, so 39 spaces down. So the same dimensions that we have in the Washi Tape Shop's journal, or one dot grid space more, both horizontally and vertically, when comparing to the Archer and Olive. As promised, the paper is really smooth, and that's also again surprising for paper that is recycled. Typically when I think of recycled paper, I think of a lot more kind of brown toned paper. Not necessarily like a very saturated brown, but certainly not as white as this. Having a look at that color compared to our printer paper or cartridge paper, you can see that there is certainly more whiteness or more brightness with the cartridge paper. I'd say that next to the cartridge paper, this paper feels almost grey toned, so not an ivory color or a yellowy color. So if white is your preference, but you find the Archer and Olive paper too glary, then this could be good for you. Flipping to the back to do our pen test though, we are, as usual, instead of putting it on the very last page, going to put it here so that we can check for shadowing by turning this one over, and check for ghosting and bleeding by turning it the other way. Here you can see I'm going in and doing a pen test with a bunch of different pens. Mainly I've chosen the black in any pen set, just because this is typically the darkest color in that set, which means it'll give me the best idea as to whether those pens do or don't ghost, bleed, or shadow in this notebook. Also, while I was writing in with the Papermate Liquid Flare in particular, something happened that I hadn't really thought to consider previously, and that was my pen smearing. I accidentally lent in the ink and smeared some of it across my page. So along with our pen testing that I've got at the top here, I also decided to do a smearing test. You can see I had my Papermate Liquid Flare in particular that I used for these. So I started by just putting down some dots of color and waiting a little bit and then swiping them. So obviously this guy at the bottom was drawn last, so should have in theory had the most smearing, but because I got pretty much very comparable results here. I decided to do it again over here. This one was left for 1 second and then smudged 3, 5, 10, and 30, and you can see that all of them smeared. Now, the liquid flare pen is a very inky pen, so it's not completely unexpected that it has a longer drying time, but 30 seconds of drying time is a fair amount. So I'd say that if you were going to use this journal, you'd probably want to use a pen that wasn't too inky, doesn't dump a whole lot of ink down on the paper. But I'm very curious to look at the results of this because obviously our claim was that the paper is 150 GSM, but it behaves like 180 GSM. So if we flip this one over to have a look at our shadowing, yep, okay, I would say that there is no shadowing here. I'm honestly just checking to make sure that I haven't doubled up the page because yeah, I can't see anything through that, which is quite impressive. So the shadowing test, it totally passes. If we flip back to have a look at our ghosting and possible bleed through, we do have some ghosting with the Karen marker, I believe. Yep, the Karen marker, which isn't unexpected. That one is another really inky pen, but we can not even really see the Tombow or the Crayola. Like, those really don't show up, so that's pretty swish. We do have some slight ghosting on this guy, the Uniball Air Micro Pen, but other than that, nothing really shows up. Given the amount of time this took to dry, I would say that this paper is possibly coated. Given the smooth feeling, I would probably say that it's coated. So that brings us to our question. Who is this notebook right for? If you're the kind of person who very much cares about their environmental footprint when it comes to your notebook purchases, as said, this one does come with 100% recycled paper, and the bleaching process doesn't use harmful halogenated chemicals. If you like a notebook that you can personalize the front cover of, provided that personalization has 12 characters or less, this might be the right notebook for you. If you like white paper but don't want it to be blindingly white, then this one could be for you. If you want a notebook with a pen loop and an elastic closure but don't really care for more than one bookmark, then this one could be for you. In terms of people that this notebook might not be right for though, if you're using a pen that has a drying time that's a little longer, so a particularly inky pen, like we saw in our smear test, might not really work out. If you prefer your dots to be a little bit darker or have a little bit more contrast with your page, then this one might not work because those dots are fairly light. As I said, not a problem for me, but if the visibility of the dots is an issue for you, then make sure to account for that. And if you'd prefer to have more notebook cover options in terms of colors, then maybe not this one. As we said, it does only come in 3 colors. Honestly, this notebook kind of surprised me. The paper was a lot whiter and a lot kind of nicer than I was expecting for 100% recycled paper. This elastic feels super sturdy. I love that it's got a pen loop, but in terms of my journaling, I do prefer my pages to be a bit brighter in terms of their whiteness, and I usually like to have some more cover options, both in terms of color and in terms of a little design or emblem on the front. Not my typical pick for a journal, but I love that they're so focused on being environmentally friendly. As mentioned, if this notebook sounds like it's for you, do be sure to check out the link in the description box. But if you're still on the hunt for the perfect journal, I do also have a playlist of my other journal reviews that might be helpful. As always, team, thanks for watching, and until next time, bye!